male individuals building up community in their own way. And I thought that was really important as I tried to find a group of men to have this conversation with. And so I'm really excited that they were all willing to participate today and have this discussion, because I think it's a really important one. And in fact, the thought came to me after having a conversation with my son about role models and asking him who, maybe public figure-wise, today is a role model, or a role model for some of his friends and students he goes to school with. And he had a really hard time picking any male figure. And then finally, he was like, well, there's this one gentleman that does YouTube. And he's like, I think he's pretty cool. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we have not like expressed enough community-wise to reach the youth. And so I thought about where we are as far as masculinity goes. So to start, I want to start with just defining, right? Because even when I thought about what masculinity means, it was hard to come up with my own definition. And so I went to the dictionary, and it's defined as the quality or nature of the male sex, the quality, state, or degree of being masculine or manly. So that's kind of a funny way to say, like, masculinity is like the state of being a man, which is very, very broad, so to speak, but very specific. And so I think about all the things we hoist on to masculinity under that definition of being a man. And so the first question I want to start with is, what does masculinity mean to you? How did you experience it growing up? And were there any male figures that stood out to you that were role models? Pass that to the audience.
Okay. All right. So, masculinity for me has so many different looks. Growing up with predominantly women in my family, masculinity to me means getting stuff done. Because there was a lot of women in my family who had to take on masculine roles and have that masculine energy, as they say, and they get stuff done. And then getting older, getting around other men who did carry a masculine energy, they got stuff done. Whether they got stuff done in the community, they got stuff done at home, they got stuff done. It is an energy of focus, a delivery of expectations. And seeing that always inspired me to want to get things done and follow that suit. And sometimes seeing it carried by women in my family who put that on themselves to get things done, I looked at it different, as in, wow, I wish I could help them, or I wish it could look different. But growing up, I thought, okay, that's how I was supposed to do. Now, I grew up with my father and still many with my family, but having very strong mothers and aunts and grandmothers and women in community who just really got things done. It was masculine energy. So it wasn't until I got older as an adult where I saw men have that masculine energy. I said, oh, okay, that's something to model after, instead of just kind of taking the back seat and letting women move forward with that energy. I see men with that same energy, and that's something I would like. So for me, masculinity is about getting things done, moving things forward, growing forward in life.
Excellent. Well said, James. For myself, when I think about masculinity, I often think about the roles that the roles that are often expressed that men should play within the household, being a provider, providing security, a protector, things of that nature. When the model that I had and was a wonderful model is my father, Eddie Lockard. My brother and I were so blessed to have our parents in our life at the love that they displayed, and the love that my father showed my mother, but the love that he showed us through taking care of the responsibility, providing a home for us. We never lacked for anything. Now, mind you, we weren't rich, right? But we never went hungry, right? So so watching my father was a beautiful example of being a community person, of being a business owner, being connected to a spiritual belief, and being involved. As many of my dad's friends would say, he was a man's man, where many people would come to my father. Even my friends, unbeknownst to me, I come home from school and my friends in there sitting there talking with my dad, because the reality of growing up on the west side of San Bernardino, and I see my homegirl, literally homegirl over there in Rockland, Washington, is many people in our community didn't have their fathers. A lot of single mothers raising young men and raising families. So I'm appreciative, and I know that I have been blessed to have a strong masculine role model that I could call dad, and I wouldn't be here without it. So that was my motto, and I'm trying to, if I could just be happy, man, I consider that a great success.
My definition is informed by.
Walking okay.
So my definition is informed, it's multi-layered. And I want to start with my grandfather. My dad always told me your grandfather graduated high school in 1931 in Georgia with honors and a scholarship. So you have no excuse at all for getting your education and going further than your grandfather did. My grandfather, his name was Richard Allen May Sr. He went to work for General Motors, and then started his own business as a contractor, building houses all over Detroit. And so his example taught me that, I don't have to be controlled by my circumstances, by my surroundings. I don't have to be a victim of it or blame, but he had agency. He was able to create something out of nothing at a time when they were lynching black men, living in racism, living in it. So he taught me resilience. My biological dad, who I went to live with in Chicago for my high school years, he was another model who taught me how to survive the streets of Chicago as a high school young man, how to carry myself, how to be a hard worker, how to be better than your word. My stepdad, who's been married to my mom for 51 years now, he taught me how to be a good partner, how to love. He taught me how to not dominate, but seek compromise and negotiate and collaborate when it comes to differences in marriage. And my last model was the late Peter J. Harris, who was like an older brother to me. As a young man, probably 27 years old, I was seeking out other mentors because I was on my own. So I sought out Peter Harris, 1994, and he became like a big brother to me. He had a men's group for black men to gather and talk about their joys and struggles and everything. And so that has taught me a lot about being masculine, being a man.
Thank you. So yeah, for me, I grew up in a single parent household after my father passed away. So my mom was the disciplinarian and the nurturer. And so at times, you wanted the nurturer, you got the disciplinarian. And so it taught me a lot about discipline, self-sacrifice, and responsibility to, do work because you need to do it, and something you're going to get praised for, recognized for, but you show up and you give your best. And so that's, you know, the type of role model I definitely try to emulate. But then I had in the community, you know, friends, fathers who set great examples for how to be husbands that I was able to look up to. And then you know, a big brother that taught me the kind of more important man things that a man is expected to know at a certain age. And I remember the diligence with which he woke up very early for his job every morning, wearing his uniform to go out to work and provide for his family, and how many days that he probably wish he would be able to stay in bed and relax and stuff, but you know, that was the responsibility for that role, and so that did teach me a lot. And so so there's this idea of like the qualities of masculinity and the qualities of femininity, but they really do intermingle a lot when you think of qualities, because a man can be nurturing, right? You know, with their child, you know, they don't, and a woman can be a provider for her family. So when we talk about like the qualities, some of those things can vary across the board. And so that raises some interesting questions. But where I want to go next is in fatherhood. So this is for Richard, because you're the other parent up here on the panel. Has your view of fatherhood evolved, or your view of manhood evolved as you have become a parent and decided what you pass down to your offspring?
As a husband, a father to a teenager, young man who's a mini version of me, but much taller than me, and as a stepfather to an adult male, my definition has evolved, because I'm finding now I've learned that there's this tension between black men being visible or hyper visible through body cams and cell phone videos and the distortions out there, and invisible, where people see only things in their imagination, like Rock Ellison said. And so I'm learning to reflect on how I was able to navigate my way, being at a job for 31 years and retiring, just start a second career. So, well, my view is I'm teaching my son how to navigate those waters, because he's in a different world than I grew up in. His world, his day doesn't end; it keeps going with social media, and also how to teach him how to pivot, how to really, analyze the situation and how to pivot. I recall we were in Wells Fargo Bank, walking together. I was walking a little faster because I'm in a rush all the time. And we walked in, and I told him, go and sit over in the corner, and I'm gonna go to the ATM in the bank. And he sits down, and this young brother walks in, probably in his 20s, and the officer asked him at the door, "You got an appointment?" He said, "Yeah, I do." And he sits by my son, who obviously looks very young in his face, And this grown dude is having a conversation with my son, but facing the ATM where I'm getting money out of. And so all of a sudden my Chicago mindset kicked in. I'm thinking, now I can either raise up and say something and raise my voice, and then I'll be accused of being violent. Or I can just be calm, analyze it, and think of another way. so I called my son over to me. I said, Nick, come here, man. He came up to me, and the guy walked out of the bank. And so I said, son, I'm gonna teach you something, okay? If you were by yourself, he might have tried to rob you. He might have, because if you were with your mother or your grandmother, he might have tried something, but he saw you with me. And so always mind your surroundings, because you never know. And I didn't enjoy saying that, because it was like, we were leaving the movie theater, having a good time, but sometimes brothers can buy into the stereotype and act a certain way and victimize each other. And I had to teach my son that lesson right there. So pivot, navigate, mind your surroundings.
Yeah, but
So I'm not a biological father. I've been with my girlfriend for some years, and I met her son when he was 4, and he's 8 now. So we spent some time together, and there's a big difference I've learned between being a mentor and being a father figure. Because initially, I've been a mentor my whole life, working in the community, big cousin, big brother. People look up, you went to college or did something, let my kid talk to you or something like that. It's a different thing coming over maybe every once or something like that, and then being in that child's life on a regular basis. It's a huge difference, and I'm learning that in this space. And I see him take on some of my behaviors, and not always my best behaviors. And it just really makes me deeply reflect on who I am and how I show up, or I have to show up a lot better and being more present and mindful of how I show up, how I treat his mother, how I treat him, how I treat myself, how I communicate. What am I communicating with my face? He's always looking at my face like, Mr. James, why is your face looking like that? I'm like, I don't know, I'm tired, leave me alone. And he is 8 years old. He's not in school. He's in homeschool right now. And I remember being 8 years old, 7 years old, and falling out of love with school because someone said something about what I should be doing or should not be doing, and I fell out of love with school. So I went from the front of the class to sitting in the back of the class. I went from not doing homework and not being so excited about learning to I just got to do this and get this stuff over with. So I'm really trying to help him focus and be in love with school and learning, and be in love with academics and learning about himself. And he can be an aggressive kid. He's a foster kid. And so even more as you're talking about those labels and talking about how we show up on them, use your coping skills. Don't go straight to anger. You got a whole bunch of skills and other things that you can use instead of going to anger and aggression, because it shows up differently for you when you express aggression than it does for other kids. And that's something that, me being a figure in his life, I have to pass on to him. So,
Thank you. Yeah, my son is a teen, and it's been quite a journey raising him, and I do feel like he's gained a lot of positive qualities from being around me, right? So just being there definitely influences, definitely knows like you can get away with certain things with your mom, but you're definitely not gonna get away with it here. So just providing that structure, the stability for sure is always impactful. But then there's the other aspect which James mentioned a little bit of like communication, like constantly working on like how we communicate with people, how we show respect to others, whether it's our teacher, people we meet in public, even when we're upset, right? If we don't let our emotions dictate or control us, as part of being disciplined, is we're able to like reason with with the emotions that we're feeling, experience them, and then choose to react or respond appropriately. And because, for me, and I'm sure for a lot of parents, especially the parents of black men, the idea is like, we want you to finish school, which isn't always kind to you, and stay out of jail. Like those are the goalposts, like minimum. If you do those things, okay. Everything else we can figure out along the way. But we got to work really hard because we don't want them trapped in those systems or perpetuating systems that they can't get out of. So that's really been a strong focus of mine in learning how the ability to communicate as you move through the world allows you to navigate those systems. I've been trying to teach him. Next up is something that's kind of popped up in media today, which is the term toxic masculinity. It's received a lot of attention. It's really buzzworthy. Do you think masculinity is inherently toxic? And then how do you differentiate between harmful stereotypes and genuine expressions of masculinity?
Myself, I do not think masculinity is inherently toxic, right? It's like saying femininity is that toxic? No, it's an aspect of an individual. How one operates within that can be of a positive nature or a toxic nature, right? It's like my dad would talk about a hammer. You can use a hammer to build a house, or you can use a hammer to rob someone, right? So it's all about how that individual or person moves in this space. For me, I think some of the harmful stereotypes that we often see, and how Mr. May kind of spoke towards it with the media and how they always try to portray the African American man as hyper aggressive, but they don't show the yoga dude that's over here doing meditation in the park, or we know about the bird watcher in New York. You know what I mean? There's so many positive things that we do, but it's this narrative that seeks to perpetuate the ongoing harm that we have received in this nation and in this country from its founding, right? I believe that genuine expressions of masculinity, for me, I see that as leadership, someone stepping up to the plate, someone there's a problem and tries to find a positive solution or a workaround or something that will bring peace to that space or solve that issue. So for me, I think that's so important, and it's an honor to be up here with each one of these brothers, because I've known most of these brothers for probably close to almost a decade now, and knowing how they move and how they model positive masculinity, empathy, kindness, showing their emotions, you know, and this real stand-up brothers, and it's an honor to be next to each one of you.
Yeah, hearing toxic masculinity a lot, and I don't also hear trauma tied to it. Because a lot of what people, attribute, to toxic masculinity comes from just traumas and passed on traumas. Your daddy didn't talk, so you're not talking. Your daddy was abusive, so you're abusive, or you didn't have one. And so the homie in the neighborhood who raised you, or the person on TV who told these things to you, now you taking that in, you observing that, and that's how you are treating people in your community and people in your life. A lot of these traits that are considered toxic are self-sabotage and pushing other people away because they don't want people to get close. I got some toxic traits myself, and I'm still working on. And I know it's because I seen something as a kid and interpreted it one way, and it may have felt good in that sense to keep people away from me. I don't have to deal with those emotions. I don't have to express those things. I don't have to feel those things that a lot of times in society I was not supposed to feel. I'm not supposed to release. I'm not supposed to cry. I'm not supposed to talk about that. What do? I get angry and I take it out on the football field or basketball field, or I take it out on how many women can I be with and how much alcohol can I drink, or how many this or how much this. So when they don't give you a proper channel to express your humanity, it can become toxic. And that's traumatic for us to experience, and it's a trip. I was talking to a coworker of mine, and she said she has like a 16, 17-year-old son, and she's Chinese American. And she said her son was online, and she was starting to be concerned about him because he was being more aggressive, because he was tuned in to a certain political side, a certain side of the internet where you have these hyper aggressive males who are really, attractive to a lot of, especially teenage boys who have all this aggression and these hormones going, and they say, yeah, he's getting things done, he's violent, he's this, he's getting what he's wanting, women and all this kind of things, and people don't usually call that toxic. People call that power. So when we talk about these different issues, I think we have to look at the whole thing, where it comes from, and when is it a CEO takeover, and when is it just a hurt boy who's trying to express himself, but he doesn't have the power to take anything over, so he takes over what's in front of him. So looking at those issues, it's big and broad.
You know, I want to just think about what you just said about trauma. And someone said that trauma is unprocessed memories, where something happens to you at a certain age and you don't have the tools to really figure it out, deal with it, understand it, so it becomes suppressed. And you get older and things trigger you, and you get this trauma time travel where you overreact to something. And with men, because it's acceptable to go at things alone, to not be vulnerable, to say I need help, it's very easy for men to find themselves either buy into emotional incarceration, just stuff everything in, or just pick up on some self-destructive behavior, a coping mechanism, whatever it might be, but it is self-destructive. And it's taboo for a man to want to go get some therapy. It's taboo, for a man to say, I don't have all the answers, I need some help here. And so I know that many times the gangs contribute to the toxic view of being a man. Stereotypes, media, but I know that even in my life, there are good positive role models of black men, who are doing the work, who are paying their child support, who are actually present emotionally in their kids' lives, who are going the distance and not say, let's just throw the towel in and forget about this, who are really, who know how to be quiet at times, and not try to prove something. So having diagnosed the problem, my solution is to start a online, via Zoom men's group for brothers, a reading group. We're gonna go through a book, talk about it. You have Audible, you can listen to it while you're stuck in traffic. You can read it and talk about it, and have it be so organic that all of a sudden guys are talking about some behavior that's a secret. I was told once that women can't stand a liar, and they can't stand a man who keeps secrets. Those two things. And so to have that men's group virtual, grow more organically, and guys are opening up more and not trying to give advice all the time, but trying to really take some wisdom.
Thank you. But yeah, we need more men's groups and spaces to have those typical conversations, because I think about the harm that comes from patriarchy and the way it affects men, right? Like it's saying, you man shouldn't cry, right? And then holding men to that, oh, you're crying, oh, you're acting that way, and somehow diminishes them. Emotion somehow diminishes a man, right? Or there's men may be expected to have all the answers and not need to figure things out or seek counsel. Those are the harmful thoughts there is what really affects man, because patriarchy has expectations for power and control and wants to hold on to it. So I want to go somewhere, and it's a little bit with what James was mentioning, and that this idea of alpha man, and we see that a lot in media, and it has been for a long time, but we still see it today. We see characters like John Wick or like Chris Hemsworth, it's showing off, you know, these digital abs, and and we see it in music too, right? In the way that music treats women, or you know, treats brothers that look like each other. And so, you know, what are your thoughts? Like, is the man's man like outdated, or do we have a more comprehensive view of how to move forward that doesn't require six-pack abs and, you know, diving into burning buildings? Any thoughts?
I think it is, a lot of it is still based on the packaging of it. I think masculinity is still sold at a high price when it's macho man. You can sell it easily. Like I said, you can sell it easily. A bottle of Axe spray to a 17-year-old boy, you know, or bigger the truck, the bigger the car, a Budweiser poster or something like that. That's very easy to sell to people. Of this is the idea of masculinity for men and women. This is what it is. You have to really take a look at yourself to think beyond that. I think more that is not just how do I come with aggression, how do I come with anger and these limited arrays, but once again, just being a human. I think when they box people into boys, you gotta wear this, girls, you gotta wear that, and this is the only way you can feel, you can think, it becomes easier to sell. This is what a man is. It becomes easier to sell. This is what a woman is. And when it's packaged up like that, I think people are arrested into those different spaces, and they're not able to fully express who they are as people, which is a detriment to the community at large. Because if you can't fully be yourself, if you can't fully express yourself, then it's harmful not only to you, but to people who depend on who you are fully as a person. So, yes, music is still very much, they pay more for the more toxic, they pay more for the movies, more shoot 'em up, they pay more for it because it just triggers those things inside people that people are still attracted to. So I think as men really fully develop and step into who they are beyond what they've been sold to become, then they look for something a little bit deeper, a little bit more fulfilling. They look, as we talk about, for a partnership that's more than just, oh, this is how she look on my arm. They look for companionship with friends that are more than just, who can I compete with, who has the biggest dad or whatever that. And it's more than just my worth is in how much I produced or how much money I have or how big is my this or that or whatever. It becomes who I am as a person. But if they selling you on, you know, what kind of hat you wear or whatever, you don't think about who you are as a person. You think about what you're wearing on the outside, what you're driving, or what you're spending. So it's still a very marketable thing to be macho.
Just short and sweet. I think that the manly man is still, relevant in today's society as we see examples of acts, everything pretty much is geared toward that. So I think it's very relevant, and that I think it'll probably continue to be relevant because those were the same kind of marketing that was probably, that our parents saw, and it's probably the same kind of marketing that your children see, our future children may see,
I was listening to an excerpt from a book that just came out called Being the Man, the Moment Demands. And the brother was talking about how someone did a study about the actual alpha male stereotype with a strongest male wolves would lead the pack. And that wasn't the case. It was the male and the female wolf that led the pack. And so it's a definition that has to be dismantled. I know as a father, I try to teach my son that you do not objectify women physically. And I wonder what it would look like if men would objectify women emotionally and relationally instead of physically. And so the John Wick and Thor example, you know, if I deconstruct that example a little bit more, there's some excesses, but John Wick and Thor actually were trying to protect the vulnerable. So there's a flip side to it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think about those that may challenge the notion, right, in maybe media and Hollywood, that may use their intelligence to solve trouble in TV show, or even as just with how they carry themselves. So I really like the actor Coleman Domingo, right? Always sophisticated, always dressed, you know, elegant, never feels like there's a diminishing of him as a man, despite you know what role he's playing, or what his sexual preference is. He always represents this, to me, like this strength in the characters he plays and on television, and then, you know, when I see him in media as well. So that's like a particular individual that I feel like can push against some of the notions that we see before in the past. But I understand what you talk about where, you know, money. When we live in a capitalist society, it's easy to sell certain things. And that's why, you know, we're going to have the video vixens, and we're going to have, you know, men in videos showing off their cash and their cars, right? And because those type of things, it perpetuates a system that makes certain people a lot of money. I want to go into what you mentioned earlier, that emotional incarceration, right? And I remember that term from Jason Wilson's book. I think it's Cry Like a Man. And so, like, mental health, that's a big topic. I think the CDC reported that suicide is now the third leading cause of death for Black adolescents and young adults. And so, how do you think we can support Black men, and especially the young adults and adolescents, when it comes to mental health?
You know, I was listening to this talk radio show, and they were interviewing Black male barbers, and they were being trained to listen and to really guide the conversation if they have a young brother in the barber chair, and to get them to talk about what they're going through. So, you know, there are different spaces that can be redefined as therapy and getting help. No, they don't have a license as a therapist, but it's a start, because the barbershop is a good, safe space and a brave place, you know, at times to really unpack and make it more than just, I gotta get that cut, you know. So I do think that it starts right now. Form a support group, a discussion group, a reading group, Black men who read, you know, and not being afraid to mentor another brother. I mean, I know as an instructor, I've been teaching college for over 25 years, and Black men come and go in my class, and I have the highest expectations of everybody. And occasionally, I'll pull a brother aside who reminds me of me when I was chaotic and dropping classes and just didn't have any motivation except living for the moment. And I say to him, hey man, come for a second, talk to me. You know, you're wasting your time. And if I didn't care, I wouldn't say nothing to you. But I care about where you are and where you're gonna go. So here's how you can get a grade in my class that you're proud of and not trying to skate by. Because I see you. You remind me of me, which is why I'm talking to you right now. And when I have that kind of talk with the brothers, they take it a certain way. I'm not attacking them. I'm not trying to punch down on them. I'm looking in their soul, and they receive it that way too.
You know, one thing that, because I used to work for the African American Mental Health Coalition as an outreach worker, and it's crazy how when I used to think about suicide, I used to think that was a white thing, right? Really, I did. But now, you know, seeing these disturbing trends that is like the third leading cause of death for adolescents and young men within our community is something that we really have to take seriously and start addressing. Like you said, those conversations, pulling someone aside, words of wisdom, you know, encouragement. I really speak, to me that all falls under speaking life into them, right? Letting the brothers and young men know that they're valuable, that they have something to give to this world. They have a purpose that, and hopefully try to make them understand the gift of life. No matter what your surroundings are at that current moment, it doesn't define what you are able to do with your life. And then one thing I think makes a huge difference is exposure. I think about some of the friends that I grew up with when I imagine y'all pursued some rapping at one point in time in our lives, right? You know, I had a group of friends, the Blunt Bros was the name of their group, and me and my cousins and family were Franklin Estate when we would rock together. And some of the brothers had never been to the beach. It's just something they saw on the TV. Now, we're in San Bernardino County, the biggest county in the country, but the beach is only about 50 to 60 miles that way, you know what I mean? So I say all that to say exposure. Letting them see other examples instead of just their temporary or their current surroundings. Exposing them to different circles, different career paths, different socioeconomic levels, showing them that this is all here. And your efforts on how you approach life and are willing to render and invest your time can influence or directly influence and dictates what you do with your life. So if you're willing to work on yourself, invest in your education, prune in your life, cut away those people that might not be about positive things and ain't going nowhere, that you can achieve great things. So exposure and speaking life into them, I think, are two ways that we can support our young youth.
Definitely. And I'm realizing the more I love myself, the more I'm able to open up to other men in my life and young men where we can have different conversations. We can have conversations about who you like, who you don't like. We can have conversations about what you feel. Where I remember probably sometimes as a kid, all I did was just listen to older men, and you know, you gotta do this, make sure you get a good job with benefits, and you know, stay away from this and stay away from that. But also now I'm able to say those things and then listen to them. And listen to them without criticism and without judgment and without, hey, this is what you need to do is. It's like, no, I have no idea what's going on in your world. I don't know what's going on your YouTube channel. I don't know. So I'm listening, and I'm trying to listen with an open heart. And the more I spend in my practices of therapy and yoga and all the other stuff that I do to work on loving myself, the more space and capacity I have to love them. Going to the schools and you hear teachers talk about the biggest issue with these children is people are not paying attention to them. And that attention is equal to love. Nobody's looking at me. My mama gone, my daddy gone, I'm coming to school, so I'm acting a fool. Y'all heard about the elephants, the road elephants? Y'all heard about that? A bunch of elephants in a herd, the adult older males got murdered by the poachers. Poachers came in and slaughtered the adult males because because they wanted their tusk. So the younger males who came up under them rogue. They started going into villages, going into cities, tearing up cars, killing people. Those young elephants came in and just started destroying everything because they didn't have the older males to teach them, to guide them, to love them. And you see the same thing with us. If we don't have older males who have been through some trials and some tribulations, Gennaro, he told me a couple months ago, he was saying, like, man, if it ain't a challenge, you probably ain't doing it right. You know, sometimes it's a challenge in life, and if you don't love yourself in a certain way, you're not gonna be able to go through that challenge without that sense of bitterness and hurt that sometimes can be passed on through men. So the more men take to love themselves, love on themselves, and share love. I tell my daddy, I love you, daddy. And he's like, oh, all right, but we change some things. So love the kids.